Again, good afternoon and welcome to the latest edition of eCapital's webinar series for PBCS updates. This month is Spring into Action with May's Updates. My name is Steve Adam. We're going to be joined again, as usual, with Bob Usted and Ryan Kohler. So for those of you who are new to the series, eCapital Advisors is an award-winning consulting firm. We specialize in data management, advisory services, business intelligence, cloud applications, and other solutions for the Office of Finance. On our Oracle practice, we focus on business intelligence and the Hyperion Enterprise Performance Management space. So as I mentioned, we are with Bob and Ryan. Both are senior managers with our Oracle practice. Bob has over 5 years of experience working on Hyperion implementations within healthcare, financial services, retail, and consumer products. Ryan has also successfully implemented a variety of complex projects within supply chain, healthcare, and manufacturing within the EPM suite for the last 7 years or so. What we do encourage is during the presentation today, please do ask any questions, and we'll get to those after the presentation. And you can just do that by jumping into the Q&A aspect in your WebEx. What I'm going to do now is just hand it off to Ryan and Bob, and we'll take it from there.
Sure, thanks, Steve. So as Steve mentioned, the webinar series that we provide on a monthly basis is really looking through the PBCS monthly releases that Oracle is implementing, and we go through those and we check through them. We do all the testing, look at the new functionality. So at the end of the day, when your release is pushed into your production environment, you feel ready to go and you don't have to go in there and test all that yourself. So before we get started with the May release, why don't we go ahead and just go through a couple follow-up items as far as questions that were asked in the April session. So I think the first question was specifically around EPBCS, and is it possible to transfer licenses that are originated as PBCS into the Enterprise Edition? And I think we've definitely seen a little bit of that happen so far. I think the main point here, though, is we would encourage you to reach out to your Oracle rep and help kind of coordinate through that path. The next one here that was specifically asked from last month was around actually new functionality that was introduced in the April release with data masking. So the question was around, can you use the functionality to mask data for just one database in your application or one plan type? So the answer to that is, at this time, no. So it's an all or nothing approach. So when you use the data masking command with EPM Automate, it's going to mask the data for the entire application. So still, I think, a very powerful new function here that's available to us in PBCS, but just keep that in mind that it will transform your data for the entire application. So as we jump into today's webinar, why don't we go through, as we normally do, just a quick introduction to PBCS. So what is PBCS? It's Oracle's best practice, budgeting cloud services that really allows you the latest and greatest, input process, reporting process, dashboard process, all into one simplified interface here. So on the screen here, you'll see a couple helpful screenshots just showing you some of the key features there. I'd also like to point out, though, don't forget about EPBCS as well, so the Enterprise Edition. And really the main difference between PBCS and the Enterprise Edition is you're going to also get some built-in functionality and some built-in modules around workforce, CapEx, projects, and financials. So, all ability to customize those as well, but it gives you a really great starting point if you're really trying to implement a full system there to integrate your company. So now let's jump into why you're here. So in the May release, the new features that are included here are listed in the table of contents. So today we'll go through each of these one by one. I do want to point one thing out that I think we saw a minor change with the table of contents this month that I think is kind of helpful. If you notice, under the announcements and new features, they've now separated things into PBCS and EPBCS related, and then also just specific to EPBCS there. So if you look kind of in the middle of the table of contents, you'll see for Enterprise Planning and Budgeting Cloud only. So that will list out the specific new functionality pieces that are specific to only EPBCS there. So let's go ahead and jump into it. I guess one thing I wanted to point out too is May 5th was when the May release was pushed to your test environment. And then this Friday, May 19th, is when it will be pushed to your production environment. So any of the new features that we're covering today that you find appealing, just keep in mind that you'll be able to leverage those in your production environment starting this Friday. So the first new piece of functionality that's included with the May release is the new Simplified Dimension Editor. This is a pretty cool major update, actually. So it's going to essentially kind of replace your classic dimension editor at some point. So, those of you who are familiar with even on-premise Hyperion planning implementations, if you recall the dimension editor, not very easy to navigate through, helpful to change, one property at a time, as you're kind of cherry picking through a hierarchy, but difficult to scroll page to page, So what this is doing is providing you with a much better interface and a much better user-friendly interface that will allow you to kind of modify your dimensionality in an ad hoc mode. So you'll access the new simplified dimension editor under the application icon and then jump into overview there. And then you'll see your application overview. Go ahead and click on that dimensions button or the dimensions tab. And that's going to bring you to the screen that shows all your dimensions. In this case, I chose the period dimension to start out. Now this is going to be the difference between what was included in the simplified interface before and what's there now. So if you look at that screenshot in the top left there, that kind of hierarchical view there, that's the new button or the new tab that's been introduced, and that will really enable that simplified dimension editor. So when you click on that, you're going to notice now you have kind of almost a smart view type view or a grid layout of your dimension that you have selected. You'll have all of the properties that are applicable to that specific dimension listed on the columns there. And another nice thing here is that second arrow on the screenshot on the right side of the screen there, you'll see you can navigate dimension by dimension without actually exiting the simplified dimension editor. So in this case, why don't we jump over and say we want to jump into entity. So in this case, I've changed my point of view from period to entity. And now you can start seeing additional properties that show up on the columns, right? So these are properties that are specific to the entity dimension. And then you'll also see a bunch of different icons that are actually very similar to a smart view ad hoc grid. So you have things like zoom in to all levels, zoom in to base levels, keep only, remove only, things like that. You can kind of customize your viewpoint in order to help organize the best point of view that you want for customizing or updating your dimensionality. So in this case here, just to run through a quick example, I've located a North America node in the tree here. I'm going to go ahead and expand all. So in this case, by clicking the icon that the arrow is pointing to, I'm going to expand all members underneath here. And then let's say I just wanted to focus in on US. I could then highlight US and then click the keep only icon. And just like Smart View does, you'll notice that in our simplified dimension editor, we just have US there. So pretty cool functionality there, when drilling in and out and really being able to isolate the point of the hierarchy that you want to update. So now I can take US and drill to the base levels there, and now I have just my US entities there in a specific point of view. So this is pretty cool functionality. I think this is a big upgrade from what we're used to within a classic dimension editor, if you will. So you're probably asking yourself, what happens if I get too deep into the weeds here and I can't really remember how to restore my dimension view how I want it? That's what's pretty nice here too. There's kind of a reset button. So at any point in time, you can go ahead and click it, and it's going to bring you right back to your standard view. So if you notice, by clicking that reset button, it's going to bring me back to just the entire entity dimension from the start. So pretty cool functionality here, I think, in general. I was very impressed by it, very smooth. A great way to kind of cherry pick specific dimensions and specific members of dimensions and update their properties. Another thing I really liked here too is you don't have to go anywhere to actually refresh the database. There's a button within that dashboard there or within that ribbon that will allow you to refresh the database directly from this new simplified dimension editor. So you can imagine you can make all your changes and refresh the database, and then you're ready to go, all in one menu, which I think is a very big improvement here. So I think clearly we're kind of moving towards the simplified interface more and more as we approach the end of this year, where the simplified interface will be the main way to go, and the classic interface will be discontinued. So they're definitely streamlining a lot of these activities. So we were very impressed with this. Some of the better functionality I've seen come out recently. So definitely 2 thumbs up from our side there. So let's go on to the next piece of the May release, which I actually also thought was a pretty good enhancement here. And this is getting into additional functionality within the navigation flow menu. So this specifically is looking at the ability for an end user to launch a financial report with one click. So, if you're familiar with the navigation flow, you can access that from Tools and then the Navigation Flow button. And that's really just a menu that allows you to customize your simplified interface. So if I go into the navigation flow button there, it's going to take you to a default navigation flow that you have defined when you create the application. So that's all pre-built in, nothing you have to do there, and that's going to give you the default layout. If you already have some custom views, you'll also see those there as well. If you don't, you can click that little gear button or gear icon in the top right, and you can create a new custom navigation flow as well. Keep in mind for any given user, you can only have one active navigation flow at a time, which obviously makes sense, but it allows you some flexibility to kind of create your own custom views. So once I'm in here, I can then kind of navigate throughout the custom navigation. So in this case, I just created a new navigation called custom. I can start moving things around, making them visible, moving them up and down, removing them. But in this case, because I want to enable the financial report with one-click functionality, I'm going to go ahead and click Add Card. And this is going to bring up a menu with some selectable items here. The first piece being, the name of what you want the new button to be called or the new icon to be called. In this case, I call it my favorite report. I want it to be visible. If you look here, you can define it as clusters, so you can kind of embed that within financials, projects, workforce, or if you just say none, it'll be at the base or the root icon list for your simplified interface. Then you can choose an icon for it too, and there's a large list of icons that you can select from. And then lastly, you'll have an artifact that you'll select. So in this case, it would be a financial report. When you go through here and click that artifact button, you're going to notice you have a library to choose from. So there's a lot of different things you can choose from here, forms, dashboards, financial reports, among other things. But once you're able to select the financial report that you want to include for your new icon for your simplified interface, what you're going to want to do is you're going to need to log out and log back in for this to be visible. So once you do that, though, you're now going to see in your simplified interface your new financial report one-click access there and your new icon that you selected along with the description. So that's pretty cool. If you want to help some of your users, customize their simplified interface to be more user-friendly, maybe if there's a certain accounting team that looks at cash flow statements all the time, and you have some FR reports that have the cash flow information or something like that, you can have just a one-click to their cash flow report just to quickly access that. So I think definitely some more exploring that we'll do here for future reference. But I think in general, point A here, awesome new functionality to include financial reports within the selection of artifacts. I think the second benefit or almost reminder here, though, is I think it's a good idea to look at customizing some of your navigation flow. If you're not using certain pieces of functionality, you can remove it or hide it. If you are leveraging, some functionality in PBCS more than others, feel free to click in here and create some custom buttons here. I think it's a great way to create a better user experience. So overall, I think we're very happy with this new functionality as well. Number 3 in this month's release is just kind of a small change, but it's introducing runtime prompt values for rule sets. So not just rules, but rule sets themselves. So just as a refresher, our rule set would be a combination of one-to-many rules within one rule set. So when you want to customize this, you can go into Application, Jobs, go into the Schedule Jobs menu, make sure that you're selecting it's a rule type of job, fill out some of the specific information here as far as scheduling, the name of the job, things like that. And then when you come into this last screen here after you click Next, you can actually filter by just rule sets. So I think that is a helpful tip there. If you have a lot of different rules and a lot of different rule sets, across multiple cubes, you can use that filtering. It'll help you kind of pinpoint what you're looking for a little bit better there. So you can filter by the cube as well as the rule type. So in this case, I'm filtering by just rule sets. I go in and select a rule, and now I have these runtime prompts that I can go in there and change accordingly. And then, when I go ahead and schedule and finalize this job schedule, it's going to leverage the runtime prompts that I've added here. So a good overall enhancement, I think, to the job scheduling tool, especially looking at rule sets and not just the rules itself. So, those are kind of the first 3 pieces of functionality that'll be released as part of this month's May release. I'm going to pass it on to Bob now, and he's going to go ahead and cover the rest of the material for this month's release.
Thanks, Ryan. Yeah, so the last release, or the last feature that's part of the May release here, that all users, regardless if you have enterprise for the standard planning, budget, and cloud services is just going to be updates to Academy. So there's actually quite a few more videos. We got more videos. There's more documentation. Really, Oracle, they must have taken some time over this last month to really beef up their documentation around their application. I mean, really, if you, even today, users that are planning users now, if you log into your prod and you log into your test and you go to that Academy button and you look here, I mean, right away, you're going to see the number of videos available is almost double. So, you know, it's really helpful. This tool has been really helpful to maybe not make you go to trusty Google to like look up questions, but instead using some search functionality that's actually in Academy, and you'll get better hits doing that. Again, you have, you know, text documentation around certain things within the application, but also a lot of videos. So really this feature is just outlining for us some more of those videos and documentation that they do have available for us as users. And that right there is the last of the standard planning, budget, and cloud service. So the next two that we're going to talk about are only available for enterprise customers. So the first one we're going to talk about, somewhat related to the new dimension editor that Ryan had talked about earlier. However, this is more, well, this is only available for those, for actually the one financial model that you can enable when you are an enterprise user. So basically, an enhancement that is available this month is when you configure that financials module within the planning, budget, and cloud service, there is an ability to upload members into the application, you know, just using a CSV file or an Excel file, but basically you can upload them into there. However, that feature, you know, all of your property values that you had available to you in the application, it wasn't available through this configuration tool. So basically, Oracle has beefed up that import process for flat file manipulations of that financial module members, and it's expanded it to be more inclusive of all the options that you have. So, you know, really a change for users, and we do commonly see this within these predefined modules where they can be maintained in files because the list can just be large and they could be perhaps being updated from other source systems. So this is going to be really helpful to maintain that metadata to keep it all in sync to those properties that you're going to want long term. Then the final enhancement that we have here is related to just that project enterprise module. So within the projects, within your project summary and project details, there's actually a new action button. So those action buttons are found, you know, in numerous screens throughout the planning, budget, and cloud service. But this one is specific to projects, where now if you go into this project details screen, you can actually go ahead and you can copy your project. So whether that would be to copy it, you know, from one department to another as a starting point, perhaps, as you're spinning up another project, whether it would be to, you know, copy that project from a working scenario to a final, you know, whatever you want to do to basically replicate or copy off that project, you can now do very easily from a quick drop-down action button instead of possibly writing rules or, you know, some other process to kind of manipulate the maintenance of those projects. And really, that's, you know, there were just 6 updates this month, pretty different from we saw last month. Last month, there were probably close to 20. So, you know, it could be somewhat of a relief for us out there as, you know, we go from month to month and, you know, I'm following a heavy release to have a shorter one. But, yeah, just six releases this month. I think Ryan highlighted 2 that were really important. I think those are really great releases. We could really look to leverage within our organization to help maintenance of the tool and usability of the tool a lot easier. But a small release this month. So support updates for this month are really not different from what we've been seeing. Standard interface, once again, is going away at the end of the year. So once again, those of us that are using that classic planning interface, you know, we want to get adopted to that simplified interface. I think the releases are on their own proving how much more valuable that simplified interface is going to be than the standard interface. But again, there's change management within your organization. We highly recommend getting in there, starting to learn that simplified interface and make a plan for your users to roll it out to them. So next is that Reporting Studio. So it's May. This is the month. We've been communicating this for several months now, but the desktop client for modifying your financial reports is no longer supported by Oracle. So I did test it. I was able still to log in with the client. However, if something were to happen and you're having trouble modifying a report, or if you are having struggles logging in, anything that may be, You can no longer call Oracle to get supported on logging in there. You have to use that web interface. So again, we've been communicating very similar to the desktop client, but really no excuse at this point to not learn the web studio to move forward as you're modifying your financial reports. Then finally, this is new as of last month, but integration between some Oracle Fusion products and the Planning, Budgeting Cloud service, which used to happen through just flat file integrations, basically a dump from the Fusion applications that could then be loaded into the Planning, Budgeting Cloud service. That is no longer supported as of September. So it's being replaced by data management, which is free. It's a free feature that all of us, regardless of enterprise or the standard licenses, that they'll have available to us. So if you are a Fusion and Planning and Budgeting Cloud service shop, strongly recommend looking into this now. Integrations can be tricky. You just want to make sure you and your organization are ready for that shift for that September deadline. And really that does wrap it up for this month. So like I was saying before, smaller release. The support updates, no different from what we had last month. Thanks everyone for joining. We will, as always, be ready to go next month with new features that are going to be available, but I think we had a couple of questions roll through, so I think we'll go ahead and answer those now.
Sure, thanks Bob. I can go ahead and take a couple of these questions here I see. So the first question is around the dimension editor. So specifically, this person's asking, can we still access the classic dimension editor? So the answer to that is, for now, yes. I think Bob did a good job of kind of summarizing, though, that at the end of this year, the standard interface will be going away, and everything will be moving towards the simplified interface. So, if you're currently leaning on the, more standard dimension editor or the legacy dimension editor, you can still use it, but I think you'll find that the simplified dimension editor just has a lot of enhancements, which would definitely encourage you to test out. So just keep that in mind. At the end of this year, through the December release, that classic one, in theory, should go away, unless they change the date there. And I can actually take this next question, too, related to another release item that I spoke to. This question is, can you add icons that are more than just report icons? So I did cover that a little bit. I apologize if I didn't go into enough detail there. So you can add custom icons around data forms, reports, dashboards, among other things, too. So we definitely encourage you in that navigational flow menu to check out the library that's available to you to select and introduce new icons for. Again, I think real powerful organizational tool there to help make for the best user experience within your application. So I think that's it for questions for this month. Again, we thank you for your time, and certainly looking forward to the June release, and we will talk to everybody next month.
Absolutely. Just want to say thanks for everyone who was able to attend, and do reiterate, if you do have any questions, do reach out to us via our website. If you have any questions or are looking to make any enhancements, things along those lines, we'll be happy to help you out. Do stay tuned for June's updates, and we'll go from there.